The first is the failure of charity. The system Dickens describes was put into place by the Poor Law of 1834, which stipulated that the poor could only receive government assistance if they moved into government workhouses. Residents of those workhouses were essentially inmates whose rights were severely curtailed by a host of onerous regulations. Labor was required, families were almost always separated, and rations of food and clothing were major. The workhouses operated in a principle that poverty was the consequence of laziness, and the dreadful condition in the workhouse would inspire the poor to better their own circumstances. Yet the economic dislocation of the Industrial Revolution made it impossible for many to do so, and the workhouses did not provide any means for social or economic betterment. The second is the folly of individualism. With the rise of capitalism during the Industrial Revolution, individualism was very much in vogue as a philosophy. The current capitalists believed that society would run smoothly if individuals look out for their own interest. Ironically, the clearest pronunciation of this philosophy comes out from a legitimate businessman, but from Fagin, who operates in the illicit businesses of theft and prostitution. He tells Noah Claypole that a regard for number one holds us all together and must do so unless we can all go to pieces in company. In other words, the group's interests are best maintained if every individual looks out for number one or himself. The folly of this philosophy is demonstrated at the end of the novel. When Nancy turns against Monks, Charlie Bates turns against Sykes, and Monks turns against Mrs. Corney. The third one is purity in a corrupt city. Throughout the novel, Dickens confronts the question of whether the terrible environment depicts of the power to blacken the soul and change its hue forever. By examining the fates of most of the characters, we can assume that this answer is that they do not. And the fourth one, the countryside idealized. All the injustice and privation suffered by the poor and Oliver Twist occurs in cities, either the great city of London or the provincial city where Oliver is born. When the Malays take Oliver to the countryside, he discovers a new existence. Dickens asserts that even people who have spent their entire lives in closed and noisy places are likely in the last moments of their lives to find comfort in half-imagined memories of sky and hill and plain. Moreover, country scenes have the potential to purify our thoughts and erase some of the vices that develop in the city. Hence, in the country, the poor people are so neat and clean, living a life that is free of discolor that torments their urban counterparts. Oliver and his new family settle in a small village at the novel's end, as if a happy ending would not be possible in the city. Dickens' portrait of rural life in Oliver Twist is more approving yet far less realistic than his portrait of urban life. The first motive is disguised or mistaken identities. The plot of Oliver Twist revolves around the various false identities that other characters impose upon Oliver, often for the sake of advancing their own interest. Mr. Bumble and the other workhouse officials insist on portraying Oliver as something he is not, an ungrateful, immoral pooper. Monks does his best to conceal Oliver's real identity so that Monks himself can claim Oliver's rightful inheritance. Characters also disguise their own identities when it serves them well to do so. Nancy pretends to be Oliver's middle-class sister in order to get him back to Fagin, while Monks changes his name and poses as a common criminal rather than the heir he really is. Scenes depicting the manipulation of clothing indicate how it plays an important part in the construction of various characters' identities. Then the second one is the hidden family relationships. The revelation of Oliver's familial ties is among the novel's most unlikely plot turns. Oliver is related to Brownlow, who was married to his father's sister, to Rose, who is his aunt, and to Monks, who is his half-brother. The coincidences involved in these facts are quite unbelievable and represent the novel's rejection of realism in favor of fantasy. And the fourth one is Oliver's face. Oliver's face is singled out for special attention at multiple points in the novel. Mr. Sowerberry, Charlie Bates, and Toby Crockett all comment on his particular appeal, and its resemblance to the portrait of Agnes Fleming provides the first clue to Oliver's identity. The power of Oliver's physiognomy, described in the facts that Fagin is hideous and Rose is beautiful, suggests that in the world of the novel, external appearance usually gives a fair impression of a person's inner character.